Hello and welcome all. You guys know what the Institute of Peace is. It's the center of secrets. It's for sex, drugs, and rock and roll, or for the CIA, it's for drugs, guns, and regime change. We are going to go through the U.S. Institute of Peace website, the 194 video website. The website is actually, well, it was down for a while. I think it's back up. Darren Beattie is in charge of the place now. What I want are a U.S. Institute of Peace files. Okay? Type this in chat after me. USIP files. Spam that in chat. That's the goal. We are still halfway through year one of the Trump administration. We have 4 years. It's great that there was a grand jury indictment motion filed today by the Justice Department on the Rushgate stuff. That's epic. Everywhere I go in Washington, everyone's like, Benz, why aren't you in the admin? Why aren't you working in the admin? What happened? And then they pitch me jobs. Well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do this? And I'm like, I got 12 different hats. I feel like I'm in a different government office every day. And every day that I'm not in a government office, I'm on the phone with government people. I'm enough in the admin. Part of the problem is people in the admin don't know exactly what to make of what they inherited. Like, I don't think ODNI knows what the CIA was doing in the information control space, control over media and censorship. I don't think the State Department has pulled that thread nearly to the degree it needs to. We don't have a USAID files yet. We don't have a U.S. Institute of Peace files. We don't have a NED files. This is the moment. I still, to this day, when I try to research the history of the 1960s and 70s, I go to the Church Committee files, the Pike Committee files. This is our moment, and we're starting to do that. We got JFK files. We went over for 4 hours. The MLK files, we didn't even finish that in 4 hours, but that was quite a stream. I think we did 5.5 hours, actually, on the MLK files. We got the Russiagate files coming out. I say, show us your dirty underwear, federal government. This is the time. This is how trust is restored, not through censoring anyone who causes distrust, but by earning the trust, by showing us the dirty underwear. We want the dirty underwear of the U.S. Institute of Peace, which means, this is a really gory stream, sorry, but that means we got to sniff. What smells dirty? Smells dirty. It's in that room. It's in that closet. It's under the floorboards. Like the guns in Jesu Church in Miami. All right? So whenever I go to parties and people are like, oh, it's Benz. Hey, we got an open slot in this thing. Come work here. No, listen. Let me give the map. And you do with that map what you need to do. I got to be map building. Okay? There's plenty of time for me to join the admin once the map is more fully constructed, built out. But a lot of what I'm doing is building maps for other agencies to use. And tonight, that map is on one of the most beautiful buildings in Washington, D.C., the U.S. Institute of Peace, founded in 1984 to be a dirtier conflict zone version of the National Endowment for Democracy. And now that we have done NGO regime change with a whole new slate of 15 board of directors and a whole new president, Darren Beattie, it's time to sniff. Be like a bloodhound, and we'll present our findings. So, let me tell you what we're going to do. I pulled a bunch of these videos from the historical, actually, Spiral found this database. And the main theme You guys know we went over U.S. Institute of Peace's role in drug running and gun running. One of the things I am most interested in about the U.S. Institute of Peace is riot planning. You guys remember that totally kick-ass document that we went over? It was called 1983 CIA Psychological Operations in Guerrilla Warfare. You guys remember this one? The CIA PSYOP manual. An oldie, but a goldie. Psychological Operations in Guerrilla Warfare. And it was all about how to plan a riot. So, for example, control of mass meetings and mass assemblies. The control of mass meetings is carried out through a covert commando element, bodyguards, messengers, shock troops, incident initiators, poster carriers, slogan shouters, all under the control of the external commando element. When the cadres are placed in or recruited from organizations such as labor unions, youth groups, agricultural organizations, or professional associations, they will begin to manipulate the group's objectives. The psychological apparatus of our movement, by means of these internal cadres, will prepare a mental attitude which, at the crucial moment, could become involved in a fury of justified violence. This can be carried out through a small group of guerrillas infiltrated within the masses who have the mission of agitating, giving the impression that there are many of them and that they have great popular support. Using the tactics of a force of 200 to 300 agitators, one can create a demonstration, a riot, in which 10,000 to 20,000 can take part. Signed, sealed, delivered, Central Intelligence Agency. But that's 1983. It's 40 years ago, Benzie. Things have changed. Oh, yeah. Let's see what the U.S. Institute of Peace files say about that. And you'll note one of the things that they go over here. Oh, my God. We can neutralize selective use of violence for propaganda effects. We could neutralize carefully selected and planned for targets such as court judges, cattle judges, police. For purposes of the psychological effect, it is necessary to take extreme precautions and essential to gather the affected population to attend, take part in the act, and formulate accusations against the oppressor. This is the CIA talking about going after judges. And you'll see this also includes, as we talked about, use of agitators, including the hiring of professional criminals to manipulate mass meetings and assemblies, which can result in general violence. They talk about how it's good when one of their side gets killed because you want to create a martyr for the cause. There you go. Development and control of front organizations. Again, this was written by the CIA in 1983, declassified in 2017. This is Iran-Contra. This is for Nicaragua. The development and control of front organizations is carried out through internal, subjective, concealed control, through group meetings of the internal cadres and by calculating the time needed for the combination of these two elements to be applied to the masses. Established citizens, doctors, attorneys, businessmen, teachers will be recruited initially as social crusaders in typically innocuous movements. Isn't it funny to put innocuous in scare quotes? Don't you just love that? Innocuous. Mostly peaceful. Fiery but peaceful. Fiery but innocuous. Movements in the area of operations. When their involvement with the clandestine organization is revealed to them, this exerts psychological pressure on them so that they can be used as internal cadres in groups which they already belong or groups which they could join. Then, through a gradual and skillful process, they will receive instruction and persuasion techniques for the control of target groups, which will support our democratic revolution. That's how democracy's done, baby. A system for the control of cells isolates individuals from one another, and at the appropriate moment, their influence is used to fuse the groups together into a united national front. So they're going after established citizens, doctors, attorneys, businessmen, teachers. I did a little research assignment on public health because I have a feeling that the U.S. Institute of Peace, this is related, okay? Should I hold my tongue? Because I could do a full 4 hours on this. God damn it, Benzie. Can you help yourself? Can you keep it in your friggin' pants? I found like 50 countries where hospital workers were used for, because you're like, doctors, really? The CIA is recruiting doctors? And then you look at COVID and you're like, okay, yeah, makes sense. But when hospital workers walk out and boycott, it completely destabilizes a country. Old people die. It creates a sense of urgency. And I found like 50 friggin' countries where they're coordinated hospital workers and doctor walkouts in tandem with State Department action. It's unbelievable. It's just like a standard checklist item. But why don't I come back to that? Because that can be our dessert. Let's have that be our dessert. So what we're going to start with immediately is the program started within the U.S. Institute of Peace by a woman named Maria Stephan, called the Program on Nonviolent Action. And you guys know, say it in the chat. What does nonviolent mean? Translate that into actual meaning. What does nonviolent mean? Or nonviolence? What does that mean? Mob violence. Okay, Daniel Cody got it. Yes. Nonviolence means mob violence. This recruiting doctors, attorneys, businessmen, teachers, recruiting them initially as innocuous social crusaders and then using them to generate violent force at the appropriate moment, get them to become involved in a fury of justified violence. That is called nonviolence. Okay, violence is called nonviolence. Because from the military perspective, it's less violent than going in with tanks and fighter jets and napalm and dropping gain-of-function fleas and ticks on them. It's the least violent of the violent activities, so they call it nonviolence. But it means mob violence. It means a giant clenched fist and people in the streets setting the Parliament building on fire, as we've been over. So there is a center, U.S. Institute of Peace Center, Nonviolent Action. They have a whole friggin' department. Oh, they have a micro course. Oh, that's great. That's great. Love that for you guys. First in war, first in peace? What the? You're the Institute of Peace, and your slogan is, you're the first in war?
I am the Vice President and Chief Civic Engagement and Scholarship Officer here.
Civic engagement. That means engaging the civil society organizations. That means looping in the NGOs, the think tanks, the university centers, the youth groups, the union groups, the cultural groups, the arts and sciences people, so that they all form a fury of justified violence, a fury of justified nonviolence at the appropriate moment. Oh, wow, this is going to be so good. We got to come back to this. Okay, let's listen to this for a sec.
At USIP.
My name is Patrick Spiro, and I'm the Executive Director of the George Washington Presidential Library at Mount Vernon.
This new series.
Mount Vernon, huh? Who did the CIA set up as a front fund to fund the National Education Association and the World Confederation of Organizations of the Teaching Profession? It was called the Vernon Fund. Huh. Huh.
At Mount Vernon.
This new series at USIP, which is called First in War, First in Peace, is really a program that is set up to engage and to learn from military veterans. These are the people that are at the tip of the spear. They're the ones who actually are seeing the conflicts firsthand. And many of them really say that we need to find ways through nonviolent actions in which we can resolve these conflicts. As an inaugural program, it seemed most appropriate that we begin with the ultimate veteran, George Washington.
Based? Okay, hold on. So let's, we're going to come back to this. But I want to go to Erica Channel, because we're going to start with a clip here. So this is Erica Chenoweth, and we don't need any, whatever. I know that we don't need to, go after the looks or whatever. Let's just take it as it is, okay? But Erica Chenoweth has been at the forefront of every single nonviolent action, every single mob violent action against Trump world for the past decade. Like every single one, from the Summer of Love BLM riots to the shutdown DC, to the Antifa organization, to the ICE riots that just broke out, to the No Kings protests. Every street action, Erica Chenoweth is always behind the scenes organizing. And what is her background? Civic resistance. That means civil society institutions disobeying the government. What's her career? The Kennedy School of Government at Harvard. That's the manipulate foreign governments side of Harvard. She's a professor of public policy at the Harvard Kennedy School. Known for their research work on nonviolent, their organizations, their operations work on it. So her and Maria Stephan has also been behind every single one of these riots, and they wrote this book together. Now, Maria Stephan was actually the author, I believe, of, yes, so she was, look at this career, scientific career. The science of riots, okay? The science of how to start a riot. One of these things is not like the other.
But when you talk about destruction, don't you know that you can count me out? Don't you know it's gonna be alright? Alright. Alright. You say you got a real solution. Well, you know, we'd all love to see the plan. You asked me for a contribution. Well, you know, we all doing what we can. But if you want money for people with minds that hate, all I can tell you is, brother, you have to wait. Don't you know it's gonna be alright? Alright. Alright.
So there you have it, right here. It's in the fucking Wikipedia. The purpose of the mob violence is to bring about regime change. So whenever you see such a creature, such a cretin, organizing riots in your country, that means they want to overthrow your government, not achieve peace. They want to kick your ass out of government in a violent revolution that is held up to the world as non-violent because they did it with 100,000 people rather than bombs and nuclear submarines. But isn't this the perfect profile for someone working in this field? Started her career in the Department of State, where she was the lead foreign affairs officer for conflict and stabilization. Department of State, then Department of War, then NATO, and then peace. Oh, then finally, peace. Let's see. The Department of War, the International Alliance of War. Oh, and then suddenly I decided to go for peace. Yeah, no. You went for paramilitary operations, okay? You went from military to paramilitary. That's what mobs are. They are giant paramilitary street muscle. And this was the person who goes on to found the program on mob violence at the U.S. Institute of Peace. So before going into the U.S. Institute of Peace files themselves, I did want to just peruse, because I haven't listened to this yet, and I wanted to listen to this before. So her and her buddy, Erica Chenoweth, they're meeting with the Indivisible kids. You know, these are the riot organizers who got like $7 million from George Soros. They've been leading all of the riots against Trump world, and have since 2020. Indivisible was doing shut down D.C., hold the line, all that shit. And now they got all this money. Erica references Gene Sharp's Color Revolution, the CIA guide. We've been over Gene Sharp many, many, many times in this. He was the guy who was brought to the Harvard CIA, the CIA at Harvard, the Center for International Affairs. Very cute, very cheeky. Spell out the acronym. Got $50 million from the Pentagon to create a handy-dandy paramilitary guide for overthrowing the government through color revolutions. The CIA prints out Gene Sharp's Color Revolution guide called From Dictatorship to Democracy, and for 40 years has been giving a copy of that book to all of their riot organizers in every country they operate in around the world. So she found this YouTube video. Let's just listen to a little bit of this. Then we'll get to the... And I start with this because this is an example of the U.S. Institute of Peace network in action. Erica Chenoweth is the constant companion star of Maria Stephan. They co-run riots together, effectively. And here is her talking with the lead riot organizing group, Indivisible, for anti-Trump riots.
Excited to introduce Erica Chenoweth. Folks will have heard of Erica before. I know that because you are all regularly citing the 3.5% stat in the chat. Back it up.
The 3.5%. Notice how it's not 3%, because that would make you a 3%er, and you would instantly be thrown in jail by the Merrick Garland Justice Department. But their statistic is, in order to overthrow a government, all you need is 3.5% of the population to rise up and take to the streets. So even if you get walloped in an election, 70-30, and the population voted for one thing, if you get just 3.5% of the population to rise up and take to the streets, by our empirical scientific research on nonviolent action and regime change, if 3.5% of the population just rises up, well, then they can successfully overthrow the government most of the time. Let's just do a little back of the napkin here. So if 11.5 million people take to the streets in riots, they can overthrow the Trump government. So that's the magic number. That's what we need to build up to. Now, of course, the 3%ers, the Trump-aligned, right-wing aligned street militias, as they were called street militias. But no, when you do it with an NGO behind you, suddenly you are no longer insurrectionists. You're democracy promoters. But that's what they're referring to here.
I do want to do a little bit more background to open. So Erica is one of the world's foremost scholars on civil resistance and the dynamics.
Scholars. She's one of the most prolific riot planners, but she does it out of Harvard University in tandem with the U.S. Institute of Peace. So you go from being an insurrectionist to a scholar just because you have Harvard stamped on your left ass cheek.
Of nonviolent strategic conflict, their work has profoundly shaped
mob violent strategic conflict. Let me tell you why we need the U.S. Institute of Peace files. Because this is illegal. It's illegal to shut down a highway. It's illegal to block roads. And when two or more people conspire to do it, that is a felony conspiracy. And I believe within the U.S. Institute of Peace files, you are going to find entire manuals for orchestrating felony conspiracy, premeditated conspiracy. Let me pause this for a second to show you something else. Okay, we're just going to go to Maria Stephan, nonviolent conflict. Okay, show you what I mean. Civil resistance. Oh, look at that. She's also a fellow at the Atlanta Council. It's too perfect. Do you guys see this here? U.S. Institute of Peace and the Atlanta Council. You gotta love it. It's so predictable. Let's see, here she is at the U.S. Institute of Peace. This is the example in action. Everyone on the streets. Maria Stephan, 6 years ago, so that would be 2018, during Trump 1, she directs the Nonviolent Action Program at the U.S. Institute of Peace. Let's listen to a little bit of this.
Next few minutes, I will discuss the role of civil resistance, otherwise known as nonviolent action or people power.
Otherwise known as felony conspiracy, otherwise known as criminal law-breaking and premeditated conspiracy to do so.
Preventing violent extremism. So let me offer two examples to set the stage. 4 years ago in Burkina Faso, which we heard about this morning, which has been a victim of violent extremist attacks, a grassroots anti-corruption movement.
It's so predictable. Hit the bingo card. Oh, that's a bingo. A grassroots anti-corruption movement. Anti-corruption is always the phrase they use. That's why USAID spends billions of dollars on that just means creating a predicate to throw your political enemy in jail. If it's grassroots, then why is your U.S. government-funded ass backing it? Huh? Riddle me that one, Maria. If it's grassroots, what the fuck are you doing there? You're as astroturf as a fucking patch of grass on ass. State Department, War Department, NATO. What the fuck are you doing here if it's grassroots, huh? No, but you see, they need to create this lie to make it look like it's by the people rather than by the fucking U.S. Institute of Chaos. Because it looks like all these people are being puppeteered by the fucking CIA, well, then it's just a coup. It's just a fucking CIA coup run through the U.S. Institute of Peace and USAID. Not a plucky grassroots movement who just came together with all the signs that you printed for them.
Mobilize the population.
Mobilize the population. Did they get by with a little help from their friends? Did they? I gotta look for something while this plays. Hold on. I need like 2 minutes to look something up.
What would you think if I sang out a tune? Would you stand up and walk out on me? Lend me your ears and I'll sing you a song, and I'll try not to sing out of key. Oh, I get by with a little help from my friends. I get high with a little help from my friends. Gonna try with a little help from my
Thank you so much.
Nobody like.
What do I do when my love is away?
So here's a little bit of Maria Stefan in action. I pulled some transcripts here. This is her talking about shutting down roads and infrastructure.
In the quelling of independent media and in the quiet subversion of democratic norms and institutions, as we've seen in places like Hungary, Brazil, Turkey.
Hungary and Brazil. So this was in 2023. She wanted to get rid of Viktor Orban. She wanted to get rid of Jair Bolsonaro. Was she involved in the CIA, State Department, DOD, National Endowment for Democracy, USAID funded assault on Brazil's democracy to interfere in that election, to swing it for Lula? She just called Bolsonaro a threat to democracy. We know USAID was trying to regime change Viktor Orban in Hungary. All part of the same blob.
India, Hong Kong, and increasing.
India, they wanted to get rid of Modi. Hong Kong, they were behind the umbrella protest, the Pepe protest. They love Pepe in that one.
In the United States.
And in the United States, you hear that? To get rid of the Trump movement.
Turkey, India, Hong Kong, and increasingly in the United States.
Fuck you. Look at that shit. You've been on the government teat your whole fucking life. We paid for your whole fucking career. We paid for your ass at the State Department. We paid for your ass at the Department of War. We paid for your ass at NATO. We paid for your ass at the U.S. Institute of Peace to train you to overthrow fucking governments. And then at the end of that, 20 years into that career, you take that special set of skills and your little network of friends that we paid to try to overthrow our government because we voted for someone that you didn't want to win. Fuck you. Now, it's one thing when it's a political disagreement. But when you plot to break the law, to shut down highways and roads, and surround police cars and police precincts, we have rule of law, don't we, baby? Isn't that one of your favorite phrases? Maybe those anti-corruption NGOs will come in handy after all. They should be coming for you. Let's keep playing.
At the same time, movements themselves are showing signs of weakness. In our fast social media age, it's very easy to start campaigns and to get people out into the streets.
That's the goal. You see that? It's very easy. Now, who's talking to you? It's very easy for us to run a campaign at the State Department, the War Department, NATO, the U.S. Institute of Chaos. It's very easy for us to create that chaos with social media campaigns to get people into the streets, to terrorize people on the fucking streets.
It's much harder to sustain participation and to remain resilient in the face of repression, particularly when your opponents are well-funded and highly committed.
That's why they want to bankrupt us. That's why they want to bankrupt Trump. That's why they want to suck all the money out of online advertising for alternative news sites. It's the same reason they go through with the sanctions policy.
So one of the reasons why the declining success rate of nonviolent campaigns is so
mob violent. Remember, every time she says nonviolence, hit the bingo and go, oh, mob violence. Mobs in the streets. That's what she wants. That's what she trains. That's what she does for a fucking living.
Troubling is that authoritarianism is on the rise around the world and in the United States. And I think these two phenomena are closely related. The global democracy watch.
You have no fucking jurisdiction here, lady. You're lucky that we defend your ass against foreign governments that want to throw your ass in jail. You're lucky to have gotten a paycheck from us for so long. And you want to turn that on us? Your brothers and sisters in this democracy? Nah, fam. That's how you get kicked out of the family.
Watchdog organization Freedom House in its most
Freedom House. Yeah, Freedom House. That's who she cites here. The CIA spooge, which is run by Michael Chertoff. The first head of DHS. Oh, you know what Michael Chertoff moonlighted as after Freedom House? Oh, another freedom-loving, just the largest military contractor in the United Kingdom. He just went to work for a fucking weapons company. He was the chairman of England's largest weapons manufacturer. Smells like freedom, kind of like you, going from the Department of War to NATO to rent-a-riots.
Most recent Freedom in the World report reports 17 consecutive years of declines in democratic freedoms.
This is like the ADL coming up with their little like hate incident stuff. It's always getting worse. So you can always justify more money for me. This was the worst year in assaults on democratic institutions. Hey, Maria, what do you do for a living? I support and build back up democratic institutions. Oh, okay. So the worse you say it is, the more money we owe you. Is that the scam?
And a rise in authoritarianism around the world.
Yeah, not the Biden administration, who broke 250 years of precedent to arrest their political enemy for the first time in American history, 2.5 fucking centuries. Who arrested the president of the United States, arrested his lawyers, arrested his fucking valet. No, but the authoritarian is the one who takes a fucking bullet in the side of his face and still wins the election.
Today, 38% of the global population lives in not free countries.
Oh, wow.
Only 20% of the global population lives in free countries.
What's a free country, huh? Is it the United Kingdom, where they arrest 100 times more people for hate speech and misinformation than Russia does?
The United States was classified as a backsliding democracy.
Democratic backsliding. You guys remember that? Open your butthole. Remember what that means? Democratic backsliding. You guys remember the cartoon that we did on this when we went into Photoshop and we showed what democratic backsliding means? Let's keep going.
In 2021, for the first time following deadly police violence and the January 6th insurrectionary attack.
Oh, no, Maria. That was nonviolence. That was a pro-democracy protest against election fraud. The same kind you organized in Ukraine. The same kind you organize in dozens of countries around the world. That was nonviolent. Peaceful protesters, Maria. Don't you know? Don't you read the U.S. Institute of Peace?
Hack an attempt to overturn the 2020 election. So these are all troubling trends, albeit not irreversible. And I will return to the democratic crisis in the U.S. in a moment. But I want.
But you see this? They're trained, like the CIA. They're trained to go in and overthrow countries. And then an election result happens here they don't like. Well, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. When all you have is organizing street revolutions to topple a government, every time you lose an election, that's always an option. And they pulled that one out. So fuck you, fuck your funding, fuck your institutions. We're going to find every fucking email at the U.S. Institute of Peace, every text message, every record. And you better hope that you did things like Obama said. Let's do it by the book this time. If there was any domestic blurrage, that's a crime.
I wanted to first reflect for a couple of minutes on the situation in Russia and Ukraine, where authoritarianism and war interact very closely. Some of you may know that twice in recent history, mass popular uprisings in Ukraine.
Oh, I thought they were insurrectionary. Hey, what did the end stage of that look like? The Maidan Square riots? Here's what it looked like. Smoke, fire. They set the entire fucking square on fire. The CIA and the U.S. Institute of Peace. This is what they, with hundreds of millions of dollars. What was the figure that Victoria Nuland cited? $5 billion in USAID money? Mass popular demonstrations to surround the Parliament building and set it on fire, armed. burning barricades. Protesters have been burning tires on barricades. Mass popular uprisings. Professional government toppler. Professional insurrectionist. That's what that woman is. A professional insurrectionist. This is what she calls the mass, peaceful, popular uprising. Well, because the CIA did that one, so you have to call it that. You can't call that an insurrection, even though it toppled the democratically elected government of Ukraine. Why? Because they wouldn't sign a fucking trade deal. This is what this woman specializes in abroad. It's what she specializes in now at home. It's what she specialized in when she started the program on nonviolent action, on mob violent action at the U.S. Institute of Peace. Yeah, very peaceful. This is beautiful. They turned it into fucking rubble with mob violence. But look how she cheerleads it on.
The Orange Revolution in 2005 and the Maidan movement in 2014 helped remove Russian-backed dictators from power.
There it is. There it is. They helped remove Russian-backed dictators. Oh, Yanukovych was democratically elected by the people of Ukraine. There wasn't even the allegation of election fraud. He was cooed out of office because he wouldn't sign a deal with your fucking paymasters. That's what happened, Maria. The people who pay your paychecks, your little donors, your little Atlanta Council sinecures, they weren't very happy snappy because Ukraine decided to go with a Russian trade deal over a U.S. one after that President Yanukovych signed tens of billions of dollars worth of deals with U.S. companies. But it wasn't enough. You had to have everything. You had to bring him into NATO, your former boss. You had to bring him into the EU, bring him into NATO, build a fucking NATO base right on the fucking armpit of Russia. You had to privatize Naftogaz, didn't you? You had to privatize the entire industry. You had to take over the oil and gas, take over their agriculture, take over the rare earths. And they said, actually, you've kind of destroyed enough of our economy. We're going to go with Russia on this one. And at that moment, how does the CIA manual put it? At the crucial moment, you took your little USAID-funded, $5 billion in USAID-funded labor unions, youth groups, workers, miners, professional associations, and you gave them the go signal to get them involved in a fury of justified violence. You did it yourself. If insurrection is a crime, lady, you committed it in the first degree. Not just once, professionally, for a living. You are a career criminal.
Power. However, Ukrainians had difficulties in sustaining the democratic transitions.
Oh, really? The one where Victoria Nuland installed? They had trouble sustaining the democratic transitions. Oh, did they? Really? Yeah, because they didn't get to fucking vote on the president. You remember that, Maria? You remember how Yatsenyuk took power after Yanukovych was ousted? Because he was installed by Jeff Pyatt and Victoria Nuland by fucking phone call. By phone call. There was no vote. You took it over. In fact, the CIA took over the Ukrainian intelligence services day one post-revolution, as the New York Times printed. Day one. Ukraine's insurrection. Oh, but that was a good insurrection. That's good trouble. The overthrow.
Meanwhile, Vladimir Putin has consolidated authoritarian control in Russia while acting on its territorial ambitions in Ukraine. When Russia attacked Ukraine last year, it was remarkable to witness the civil resistance by Ukrainians inside Ukraine and by Russians who oppose the war inside Russia.
Oh, now suddenly we like the Russians, but only if they dislike Putin.
That included Ukrainians thwarting Russian military advances with demonstrations, roadblocks, and blockades.
Roadblocks and blockades. They love roadblocks. I want to just fast forward a little bit. The book is called
How to Blow Up.
The book is called How to Blow Up a Pipeline. What's your opinion on the book How to Blow Up a Pipeline, U.S. Institute of Peace Program Director?
The book How to Blow Up a Pipeline critiques your book and advocates climate change activism of property destruction that does not kill or injure anyone.
How to Blow Up a Pipeline and advocates property destruction. That's a criminal conspiracy. How would you like it if that property destruction was your fucking house? Your fucking car? And remember, Maria Stephan and Erica Chenoweth were backing the Tesla takedowns. Going after the Teslas. Let's see what she says.
How do you respond?
Yeah, and by the way, I saw the film, How to Blow Up a Pipeline. I thought it was super engaging and interesting. I understand.
I loved it. I thought it was super interesting and engaging. How to commit domestic terrorism at home, to blow up pipelines, to stop the construction of domestic oil pipelines. Or the Nord Stream pipeline in Ukraine. Yeah, of course I watched it. This is what I do. And I loved it.
And it's very popular. So what I would say to that, I was intrigued because I heard about that. I have not spoken to the authors, but we, in the book, we don't define property damage as violence.
Look at her. This is the U.S. Institute of Peace. We don't define property damage as violence. So what happens if you are sleeping in your bed, Maria, and a group of protesters decide that, and obviously I don't wish this on anyone, even my worst enemy. This is just a thought experiment since this is what you advocate. Someone burns down, God forbid, I won't say it's, someone burns down a friend of yours, their house, but they're not home. Is that not violent? Someone blows up your car instead of ExxonMobil's or instead of, the city of Seattle's or some random person's Tesla. What if it's your purse that gets snatched? What if it's your house that gets defaced? Your car, your possessions. Something tells me you got quite a bit of them, a career at the State Department, the War Department, NATO, the U.S. Institute of Peace. Oh, but that's not violence, huh? When your shit is violently destroyed. Oh, that's convenient. So that means nonviolence means you get to destroy violently people's possessions. This was the head of the U.S. Institute of Peace Nonviolent Action Program, where they don't define property damage as violence. This is how you have complete maniacs, psychos, criminals like her training people to go out and commit violent actions against property. Oh, because we don't define it as violence. Like someone sticking a boot straight up your ass and saying, oh, you know what? That's not assault. We don't define the asshole as part of the body of things that can be assaulted. Meanwhile, you have a permanently disfigured asshole for the rest of your life. Unbelievable. We need to find every single document, memo, napkin, unburned piece of toilet paper at the U.S. Institute of Peace and get the entire criminal record made public.
So we have a very strict definition of violence in the book because we needed...
Sounds kind of loose, huh? A very strict definition. Oh, it sounds very scientific. Yeah, meaning we can strictly blow up your house and blow up your pipeline and blow up your car, and it still counts as nonviolent action.
To kind of compare apples to apples. So violence, the way we define it in the book, is that which inflicts or threatens to inflict bodily harm on another human being. So, but we do point out that property damage can be a slippery slope. So property damage can then often lead to other forms of escalatory violence. But I was surprised when they were attacking that point, because that was not actually how we defined violence in the book.
We define, because she wants them on her side. Do you see what she's doing? This is like a little bit of audience capture. These are the radicals, the extremists that she needs in the streets. So she needs to cater to them because they are her little pawns in these movements. She needs to sound receptive to their tactics without setting herself to get criminally indicted by openly endorsing it enthusiastically. So that's why she has to come up with these little weasel words and this little abstract framing of definitions.
And our whole book is about the use of militant forms of nonviolent action.
Militant forms of mob violent action.
To achieve goals. So
militant insurrectionary mobs as a fucking professional calling, as a vocation. She pays her mortgage by working with groups to go and get engaged in militant mob action, destroying property.
Point, because that
she's saying, isn't that good enough for you guys? I form militant mobs to overthrow governments. I can't openly say you should blow up this pipeline because I'll spend 20 years in prison. But wink, wink, nudge, nudge, I endorse it. My book talks about how this works.
was not actually how we defined violence in the book. And our whole book is about the use of militant forms of nonviolent action.
The fucking 1984 Clockwork Orange word smush they try to throw at you. Militant forms of nonviolent action. And that means property damage. That means property destruction. That means you can burn down the police precinct in Minneapolis as long as the police don't get killed. So the mob can just yank the police out of there and then burn the building down. You know, you may think that's cute, Maria, the little word games. But we are a nation of laws, as you rightly pointed out about January 6th. And this is a criminal conspiracy that you're talking about to break the law. And you are organizing these criminal conspiracies. So if action is taken against you on that, you should champion your own butt going to jail. If there are documents and evidentiary proof of you doing this at home, unauthorized by the federal government, because we know you were authorized to do it in Ukraine, you were authorized to do it in Central and Eastern Europe, authorized to do it in the Sahel and Africa, authorized to do it in Central Asia, authorized because it's a CIA function. You have the backing of your little paymasters at the Atlantic Council and the State Department, and the War Department, and NATO.
To achieve goals. So, you know, this is a long debate, though, as you all are probably aware, about property destruction and when it can be helpful, when it can be harmful. Those of you who are in the anti-war movement know that, you know, damaging nuclear parts of nuclear submarines and nuclear apparatus while posting, this is why we did it, this is the purpose, and going to be arrested. So we are voluntarily seeking arrest because we engaged in this act of civil disobedience.
Notice how she never gets arrested, though, right? It's always her little pawns. Voluntarily seeking to get arrested. Why? So they can create a martyr for the cause. Well, careful what you wish for. Notice, though, it's always the 18, 19-year-old psycho kids who read her shit who get arrested. It's not the actual program director at the program on mob violent action at the U.S. Institute of Chaos.
Yes. So these have been part of the canon of nonviolent protests and nonviolent resistance.
That's part of the canon of it. It's not a crime. It's canon. Get out of criminal justice free card. You get to block highways. You get to invade the Parliament building. You get to shut down government functions when Brett Kavanaugh was being confirmed. That wasn't a crime. That was canon. But when someone on the other side of the political argument does it, oh, insurrection, insurrection. Professional insurrectionist, an authorized one. Not anymore.
And so, we all know as part of the resistance to the Nazis that, railroad tracks were exploded. Although, then when it becomes tricky is like, if the intention is to blow up a train on the railroad tracks, then that's, maybe that goes over the line to something else, some other form of resistance. So I think...
And then what does she say? She says Trump's a Nazi. And the Trumpism movement is the Nazi movement. So this is the thing. It's like we can shut down the highways. Just make sure that there's, not a pregnant mother on the highway. But this is professional and weapons grade. This woman literally spent her career in military planning. NATO, the Department of War, the Atlantic Council. And then taking that skill to coordinate the entire paramilitary side of revolutions, street revolutions, to overthrow governments. All right, let's get now to the canon of the U.S. Institute of Peace. We have here the U.S. Institute of Peace Global Campus. So this right here, and I'll put it in chat if anybody wants to see. These are 194 videos. Credit to Spiral Bewilder. Everyone should follow him on X. Who, even though the website was down, Spiral managed to find this set of legacy 194 documents. And you'll see the kind of things they cover. They have an orientation. They have youth training. Now, what's funny is I found in the I was listening to the initial orientation for new members, and they refer to everything as an intervention, the same way that that the censorship industry uses that phrase intervention as censorship technique. Shadow banning is a form of intervention. Banning an account is a type of intervention. Ghost banning is a type of intervention. Demonetization is a type of intervention. But then they had a funny side note where the moderator said, and if you're uncomfortable using the word intervention, you can call it a project. This is why you see projects, because intervention is a little on the nose, right? Shows that they're the ones intervening. So the more passive, project. But you'll see, so they have faith for rights. So this is how they organize religious groups. Remember, we talked about last week in the stream on the CIA and the church. Preventative diplomacy, cybersecurity and elections. I bet that's about misinformation. Countering hate speech. And look at the sign they're holding. It says censor hate speech. You guys see this? This is what the U.S. Institute of Peace is promoting. They want people to take to the streets and demand you censor hate speech. We have a First Amendment in this country. But this government-funded government agency, effectively, is organizing people to take to the streets. Now, of course, this is the same woke bullshit. They love hate speech when it's against the right group. Look what it says right behind that. Black Lives Matter. Censor hate speech. Black Lives Matter. Isn't that incredible? Let's watch that one first, actually. Let's see. This is from 3 years ago. So this would have been at the height of hubris of the censorship industrial complex. 2022, that would have been right when the Disinformation Governance Board was getting up and running, and before Elon completed the acquisition of X. Let's see.
Although there's no universal definition, hate speech is often described as any kind of communication that attacks others on the basis of their religion, sexual orientation, gender, or other characteristics.
Okay, so you have defined DEI as hate speech. You have defined the concept of white privilege as hate speech. You have defined much of your own orientation guidelines, which I saw went over power and privilege. You've defined yourself as a hate speech purveyor. Perpetuate hate speech. You've defined yourself as a trafficker in hate speech. Great start, buddy.
Gender, or
now let's see what you should do about yourself.
Other characteristics. Hate speech is a form of incitement that is often used by charismatic politicians as they exaggerate divides in a society or dehumanize an entire community for electoral purposes. Hate speech can polarize the electorate and justify or...
Now, understand why they're doing this, okay? Because the CIA, through the U.S. Institute of Peace, organizes groups to destroy property, to topple elections, to get in the streets and riot, and then people hate those groups. I remember, like it was yesterday, when the State Department leaned on Facebook to ban hate speech against the Rohingya. Now, the Rohingya are like the CIA drug traffickers of Southeast Asia. You know, when the CIA, as I've talked about so many times, in the War Department were growing opium in the Golden Triangle and then trafficking it, the Rohingya are vastly, disproportionately involved in this kind of criminal activity, in the drug trade, in violence. And so naturally, in an effort to try to rebut that, control that, manage that, have repercussions for that, the population, one part of the population, resents and hurls insults when the Rohingya are engaged in property destruction of their homes or of their villages or towns. But because they are a preferred group of the CIA, because they do drug mule shit, and they act as a kind of paramilitary, a kind of preferred minority of the State Department and CIA and USAID, well, then it's hate speech to go after them. But you will find that hate speech immediately goes away. Hate speech, do you guys remember the Azov Battalion banned on Facebook? Months after Russian invasion, Meta is tweaking its content policies. The Azov Battalion, the neo-Nazi group, banned from Facebook as a dangerous organization because of its open support for Nazis, well, they were also the most radical and extreme and willing to fight. So as soon as Russia invaded and the State Department and CIA needed more warm bodies to throw into the Russian war cannon, suddenly the Azov Battalion was removed from the list of banned organizations. That change will allow members of the Azov Regiment to create accounts on Facebook and Instagram and post without fear. So it was hate speech when you supported Nazis and we didn't need you as a cannon fodder for the CIA. But as soon as we need you, oh, say anything you like. We don't care about hate speech. It was never about the hate speech. It was always about protecting groups that are doing dirty shit from criticism, and then not calling it hate speech if they are doing dirty deeds that you want them to do. You saw in this that they had Black Lives Matter here, right? This idea that hate speech, they're like basically making it like an at-home U.S. thing. Censor Trumpism, support Black Lives Matter. Pop quiz, guys. What do you think would happen if the Black Lives Matter movement suddenly developed a conscience and decided, you know what, actually? No more funding for war. That $200 billion we spent on the war, it should be spent on black neighborhoods. We should go the full 2016 Bernie Sanders. No money for the war in Ukraine. All of that should be spent on our own neighborhoods because Black Lives Matter. And you had a 1 million man march on the Pentagon. Not $1 for the war, for the white war in Ukraine. Ukraine is 99% white. And we're taking all this $200 billion and we're spending it on a white person's war. We're giving it to white people in Ukraine. Fuck that. We're protesting the Pentagon. We're shutting down Crystal City, Pentagon City. We're shutting down the roads and the highways to the Pentagon now. What do you think the U.S. Institute of Peace would do in response to that? Well, suddenly now you need a right-wing populist movement to combat this radical black nationalist segment. And then suddenly they would be castigated as the hateful ones. And they'd lean on Facebook and say, actually, let's let these white war-loving accounts talk shit about them. They don't give a flying fuck about it. If the Black Lives Matter movement went MLK in 1967 and said, actually, we're going to tie our movement to the no war in Ukraine movement, all this bullshit would fall away. And they'd find some reason to call Black Lives Matter hateful, hate speech. Anything to take them out and silence their tongues, because now they're campaigning on something that's against our interests. That's all this is. That is all it has ever been. And the U.S. Institute of Peace, you heard Maria Stephan and Erica Chenoweth talk about how it's easy for us at the Department of War to generate riots using social media now. They know the power of social media to influence hearts and minds, to influence protests. They want to control the streets. This is why this group entered like a fucking lightning bolt to shut down Stop the Steal, the Facebook group, the fastest growing Facebook group in Facebook history. Because that meant bodies on the ground, but the wrong bodies, the bodies of Trump supporters. That's why they had to shut down that Facebook page immediately.
It's mass violence. Increasingly, campaign rhetoric directly incites people to violence with less restraint.
Oh, you mean like the Luigi and the what was the big phrase that Taylor Lorenz won? Somebody should do the thing. You guys know this?
So there have been a lot of videos recently about how somebody should do the thing we can't talk about that everybody wants to happen. But what I'm interested in is how everybody seems to know what the thing is. And it all comes down to a linguistic...
That thing is assassinating Donald Trump. You think they call that hate speech? The most hateful, violent thing you can humanly do? Notice how the U.S. Institute of Peace suddenly shut the fuck up about hate speech when it was their political enemies who were the target of it.
And as part of deliberate strategy. Outbreaks of racial or religious intolerance are usually assumed to be visceral or spontaneous.
But actually, they come from right-wing hate speech. disinformation.
First of all, it's important to create a sound legal framework.
And here it is. A sound legal framework to combat hate speech. This is the U.S. Institute of Peace. Hey, asshole, what does the U.S. stand for in U.S. Institute of Peace? United States? Hey, what's the First Amendment of the Constitution? Freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. Is there a legal framework to criminalize hate speech in the United States? No, that's unconstitutional. So why the fuck are you going to other countries to tell them to do the thing that's banned under the First Amendment of our country? And you know the answer. And this is what I told you they did in Brazil, they did in UK, they did in the EU, they did in Canada, they did in Australia. They went around the world using rule of law programs and counter disinformation programs to get foreign countries to pass legal frameworks, laws, to ban criticism of their little fucking puppet asset groups. The U.S. Institute of Peace. Telling countries, if you have even a sliver of a First Amendment left in your Constitution, get the fuck rid of it. This right here, I'm going to screenshot this. This right here, we need USIP files. I want to know the name of every single person at the U.S. Institute of Peace who greenlit this. I want a full list of every single country where they advocated for a legal framework to be put in place to censor the internet. I want to know every email, every text message, every internal memo, every baseline assessment, every status update report, everything. We need the USIP files on hate speech and creating legal frameworks to kill free speech.
To combat hate speech, providing a foundation to adjudicate and punish its use as a formal crime.
As a formal crime. As a formal crime. So if you say all lives matter, that's a crime. A formal crime. USIP files. We need them.
Election management bodies can design codes.
There it is! There it is! There it is! EMBs. This is exactly what they did in Brazil. So they want the legislative branch to call it a crime. But if they can't get passed as a law, they go to the EMBs, electoral management bodies. This is exactly what they did in Brazil. Who is the head of the EMB in Brazil? Alejandro de Moraes, the Voldemort judge. When they couldn't get the anti-misinformation bill passed in the Brazilian Assembly, the rule of law programs descended on the Brazilian Supreme Court and the TSE subcourt of the Supreme Court and said, listen, the legislative branch, we can't get this passed, but the EMB can treat this as a judicial power to criminalize speech. Because don't you know, all speech online impacts elections, and you are the electoral management body. You adjudicate elections and election processes, so you can have the power to censor speech online. This is what these fucking scumbags did. Them and the National Endowment for Democracy and USAID and the Biden State Department, this is exactly their strategy. I will show you the documents right now. This is the USAID State Department NED joint project called CEPS, getting Brazil's Supreme Court to launch a counter-disinformation program. Their strategy, the U.S. government, the CEPS program, Consortium for Elections and Political Process Strengthening, run jointly by the State Department, USAID, and the National Endowment for Democracy. Get all the civil society organizations and NGOs to create a panic about it. Then go straight to the EMBs, the election management bodies, through proactive, reactive, and collaborative strategies. Proactive censorship, reactive when something's flagged, and collaborating with the CIA cutouts. And then governments, media, and the tech platforms themselves. EMB approaches. Digital disinformation is a real and immediate threat for election management bodies around the world. However, these EMBs differ in their willingness to censor the internet in order to protect the CIA's preferred candidate for winning the election. An EMB's resistance, that is a court. So in the United States, the Supreme Court of the United States, SCOTUS, is our EMB. That's who decided Bush v. Gore, for example. When there's an election process dispute, it goes up to the Supreme Court. Other countries have a different structure. Sometimes it's a separate court than the one that adjudicates other things. In Brazil, for example, there's a Brazilian Supreme Court, but there's a subsection of it called the TSE, which is where the EMB is in Brazil. So here's what the Biden government said in trying to do this exact thing we just saw on video in the U.S. Institute of Peace. An EMB's resistance to taking up a role in countering disinformation may be based on an assumption that any response would require the court to invest in a wholly new technical approach that pushes them beyond their legal boundaries, their legal, budgetary, or human capacity, beyond their legal capacities. So here is the fucking CIA, the State Department, USAID, Ned Beast, saying we're trying to get courts to make sure our candidates win in their countries. But sometimes when we tell courts that they, as the judicial branch, have the power to censor the internet, they get squeamish because they say, hey, that's fucking illegal. We'd love to help you, but it's kind of fucking illegal. So here is what the Biden State Department said. There are also a range of responses that EMBs can take that build on existing core functions of public relations, communication, and voter education. Because it's like they arrested Doug Mackey because they said, oh, he's disinforming voters. Finding an alternative way to frame an EMB's counter-disinformation efforts, such as investment in election authorities' crisis and strategic communications capacity, may be a way to gain institutional support for new censorship initiatives. Do you appreciate the level of skullduggery here? This is the State Department and USAID and the CIA, by way of the National Endowment for Democracy, saying, listen, we're talking to dozens of these courts around the world. This is how they scuttled the election in Romania, through the EMB. That's how they annulled Kaylin Georgiou's first-round victory. The EMB annulled the election. You don't think USAID and the shadow State Department of the Biden NATO cabal had the EMB so far up their ass, giving their spouses homes, giving their cousins and nephews giant NGO pools of money to make sure that the EMB makes the decision that NATO wants them to make? So what USAID has learned is when courts tell us it's illegal to use their court power to censor voters, USAID says, okay, fine. How about you find an alternative way to frame the counter-disinformation, where the censorship work? Don't call it counter-disinformation, because everyone will know that means censoring information. No. Call it crisis communications. Say the speech undermines the democratic process. So you're not censoring the internet, censoring voters in their own election. No. You are just doing crisis communications work to protect the integrity of the election. They are being coached on how to break their own laws in foreign countries. And this is exactly what the U.S. Institute of Peace is doing right fucking here.
Crime. To adjudicate and punish its use as a formal crime. Election management bodies can design codes of conduct, committing political parties and their leaders to campaign responsibly and speak out against discrimination.
and they only enforce one side of it. This is what they did to the Bolsonaro movement in Brazil. 100% enforcement actions will be against the Bolsonaro movement. And they will simply define their own hate speech out. Because the judge will just decide in his sole discretion that you can use hate speech against Bolsonaro supporters. But when Bolsonaro supporters accuse someone of being corrupt, well, that's hate speech. Because they control the judges through the rule of law programs. That they're even able to talk to the EMBs, the courts, shows their access and influence, let alone the money flows. This is exactly what they did in Brazil. It's exactly what they did in Romania.
Codes of conduct may apply to media actors as well, ensuring responsible coverage of the elections.
So they control the coverage of the election. And this is how the EMB in Brazil said it's illegal to accuse Lula of being corrupt. It's illegal to call him a communist. It's illegal to play the videotape of the country's largest narco gang leader saying he wanted Lula to win. They can control every news cycle, every narrative. This fucking schlub, dead-eyed fucking soul-sucked zombie. Dude looks like he's never been in a fight in his life, and here he is trying to control the tongues of 7 billion people around the world. This doughy fucking dead-eyed freak. USIP files? What's this guy's name? Jonas Clays. What did you do with our taxpayer money, Jonas Clays? While American taxpayers are paying you, what did you say? Who did you talk to? What did you plan? How many countries did you do this in? What were your conversations with the EMBs, Jonas? I want to know.
My name's Jonas. I'm carrying the wheel. Thanks for all you've shown us. This is how we feel. Come sit next to me, pour yourself some tea, just like Grandma made when couldn't find sleep. Things were better then, once but never again. We've all left the den and typewriting. Choo-choo train left right on time. Ticket console me your mind. Driver said, hey man, we go all the way. Of course we were willing to play. My name's Wakefield. Got a box full of your toys. The fresh out of batteries. But you're still making noise, making the noise. Tell me what to do. Now the tank is dry. Now this wheel is flat. And you know what else? Guess what I received in the mail today? Words of deep concern from my little brother. The building's not going as he planned. The foreman has injured his hand. The dozer will not clear a path. The driver swears he learned his math.
NATO, Brussels.
Are going home. Workers are going home. The workers are going home. The workers are going home. Yeah.
What did I say? It would be the rule of law programs they'd be doing this EMB bullshit through to go after the courts. The American Bar Association getting $15 million a year from USAID in its World Justice Project. That's how they're going to talk to the EMBs to get them to pass these hate speech laws. Unbelievable. And of course, they put in us cyberspace, cybersecurity. Unbelievable. Hate speech erodes trust in institutions, except when it's hate speech against our political opponents. (2019) Rule of law approaches to virtual threats. Jonas. Protecting elections from cyber attacks. That's how he fucking put it. Hate speech is a cyber attack. The exact same bullshit that got CISA set up in November 2018. In April 2019, Jonas was calling hate speech a cyber attack on election infrastructure, on critical infrastructure. Unfucking believable. K. Robo forces, how the hell did America stray so far from its ideals? Because we have a blob that advances its own self-interests. And it used those ideals cynically to advance those interests. And when those ideals started getting in the way of their interests, they chose the interests over the ideals. These were Cold War weapons. The U.S. Institute of Peace was created in 1984. NED was created in 1983. USAID was created in 1961. These were all Cold War weapons that sought to align our interests in winning the Cold War with our ideals of freedom and democracy. But then in 2016, when populism started taking over the planet and free speech on social media meant that controlled media, blob media, couldn't control hearts and minds anymore, then free speech was against their interests. So they ditched the ideals because it didn't serve their interests anymore. They came up with new ideals. Preserving democratic institutions by characterizing disinformation as a digital assault on democracy. And then they trotted that out as a global norm and standard, and then codified it into rules and laws, and then funded it to the tune of billions of dollars so that the whole network would go along with it. I can't believe this. This is illegal to do in the United States. We have a First Amendment, and they're saying pass laws to put people in prison for posting speech online.
Election management bodies can design codes of conduct, committing political parties and their leaders to campaign responsibly and speak out against discrimination. Codes of conduct may apply to media actors as well, ensuring responsible coverage of the elections.
And this is how they control the entirety of media reporting.
At times, EMBs collaborate with social media platforms to block access by hate mongers.
EMBs collaborate with social media companies. They collaborate, do they? You mean they crack down on them under penalty of criminal law? To crack down on hate mongers? Oh, yeah. But if you talk about white privilege or kill the boar in South Africa, I have a weird feeling that you're not U.S. Institute of Peace in the conflict zone of South Africa. You're not telling the EMB to collaborate with the tech companies to crack down on kill the boar, are you, doughboy?
Civic education campaigns and peace messaging can encourage voters to resist hateful speech.
Look at that. They put Black Lives Matter right there. Look at this shit from the U.S. Institute of Peace. It's right in there. They have Black Lives Matter. Free speech does not equal hate speech. Free speech does not equal hate speech. Go on, schmuck.
Hate speech is a common trigger of election violence. But whether hate speech also constitutes a form of violence remains debatable.
No, it doesn't, you fucking asshole. These same bitches who say that property damage is not violence will say that words online are violence. It's not debatable that lighting your fucking house on fire, that's not violent. But saying, I hate you for lighting my house on fire, that's the violence. You see the word games they play with this shit? Non-violent action. My words are violence, but you lighting my fucking car in my house, in my fucking laundry on fire. No, that's non-violent. This is how they try to control the narrative about what acts of violence are. This is how they can try to perpetually describe themselves as peaceful as they light your house on fire, but you as violently attacking them for complaining about it on social media. This is the face of fucking evil. These eyes, there's nothing in them. There's no light. There's no color in this guy's skin. This guy sits behind a keyboard while he just tears your tonsils out. 200 million at a time in Brazil. Oh, it's debatable about whether words are violence. But fucking arson. Oh, no, that's nonviolent.
With two clearly opposed camps. Human rights advocates usually argue that hate speech is indeed a form of violence. Words can have a significant impact on how others feel, think, and act, particularly when vulnerable communities are targeted. Hate speech also perpetuates stereotypes. Neuroscientists...
Oh, we bring in our neuroscientists. Oh, well, you know, there's a circuit here when I do this. Okay. So if we make it a crime to promote censorship of speech, what does a neuroscientist say about that? You know, neuroscientists argue that when you use the fucking CIA to overthrow a democratically elected government and light its shit completely on fire, before and after the U.S. Institute of Peace's peaceful protests. What do the fucking neuroscientists say about this, asshole? Does this induce a stress response? Your nonviolent action? Do neuroscientists agree that this actually does not cause a stress response when you light people's fucking houses on fire and burn down the Parliament building on USAID fucking payroll, you fucking criminal? What do neuroscientists have to say about that? Well, we don't classify this as violence. But if you complain about it, we'll throw you in jail as a violent offender because you complained that we burned down your fucking Capitol building. Go on, Jonas.
Agree with this logic. They would argue that...
Look at this. Look at this. Look at these fucking little tricks. Look at these tricks. They're arguing that because words cause stress and stress causes physical harm, speech is therefore violence. So by your rules, you fucking human anal bead, by your rules, you're causing me stress. By your rules, your words are causing me stress. Prolonged stress. Look how long the stream has been going. You're causing me physical harm. You should be arrested for physical violence. You should have to pay $1 million in legal fees. Because there's no First Amendment anymore, right? You're the one who said that, Jonas. You should be fucking arrested by your own logic. Unbelievable scumbag piece of shit that can only work at a place like the U.S. Institute of Peace. Imagine this guy holding any other profession. Imagine this guy being an accountant, a lawyer, a doctor. Imagine this guy being a fucking babysitter. Words cause stress. Stress causes physical harm. Therefore, we can we can talk to the Brazilian Supreme Court and teach them this weird new trick to arrest millions of their political enemies because their speech made me have a stress response.
If words can cause stress, and if prolonged stress can cause physical harm, then certain types of speech constitute a form of violence. Lawyers often take the opposite view. They would argue that, while considered a criminal act of verbal abuse or early warning sign, hate speech or incitement is not considered a type of election violence. For example, the US Constitution prohibits several categories of speech that edge close to violence.
He's talking about the Brandenburg. This is an imminent threat to bodily harm. That's the test under Brandenburg. Was it the 1978 case? Was it Brandenburg v. Ohio? Isn't that what it was? The Brandenburg test. Imminent threat to bodily harm, right? Isn't that what it is? 69. Imminent. So, for example, if Maria Stephan says, hey, you should block that highway and commit that crime. So basically what your institution does. That's the one thing lawyers agree is a violation, ironically.
Direct rallying cry to attack can constitute incitement to imminent violence, rendering such speech unlawful. But the power that speech holds does not make it in itself violent. A great deal of hateful speech, racial provocations, or supremacist slogans is even protected. Unless the words provoke imminent violence or threats of serious harm or danger, that speech is constitutionally protected in the United States.
And yet here you are promoting it to be punished as a formal crime outside the United States. You're not promoting the concept. You're self-aware that what you are promoting abroad is illegal at home. We used to say that our job is to export the First Amendment. We're exporting both the spirit and the letter and the law of the First Amendment. But no, that might let the wrong party win an election. So they want to work with the legislature to create hate speech laws. They want to work with the EMBs to create hate speech punishing judges. But they know both of those are illegal for the executive branch, the legislative branch, or the judicial branch of the U.S. government to do. Well, that's our first video. We're just getting started. We have 194 of these to get through. All right, let's get to the riot stuff. Actually, let's start with this. I want to see how they do this country analysis. I'm just going to let this play.
Once you have identified an election at risk, prevention planning would benefit from a thorough country assessment or risk analysis. This analysis will help identify possible hotspots and vulnerable planning phases that merit increased attention and tailored prevention efforts. Compared to horizon scanning, discussed in the previous session, a country analysis...
Horizon scanning. Wait, we have to check out horizon scanning because the name of Maria Stephan's new group is actually called the Horizons Project. So we should get into horizon scanning. But hold on a second. Okay, actually, let's come back to that. I want to see mobilization. I want to get to the riot stuff. Let's action implementation plan, churches. Okay, actually, let's get back to this.
Will collect more detailed information on a situation already determined to be at risk. The assessments rely upon field-based reporting in partner.
And this is where you get, in partner organizations. This is where you're going to get IRI and NDI and NED and all the little USIP partner groups to do the field work.
Partnership with local organizations and take a deep dive into local dynamics. An early assessment, say 12 to 18 months before Election Day, would ideally be followed by ongoing situation monitoring. Each requires several weeks to complete. Typically, 3 core components are covered. 1, priority risk factors. 2, scenarios for violence. And 3, recommendations.
Yeah, except when they're planning the violence with their nonviolent actions, with their mob violence. Let's look at this. Conditions enabling. Let's see. Patrimonial politics. By the way, what language is this? Does anyone see what the what language are these captions in? Does anyone know? Patrimonial politics? Political mobilization. Militant mobilization. Isn't that exactly what Maria Stephan, the head of the U.S. Institute of Peace Nonviolent Action Center, says that she does professionally? She mobilizes militant crowds. That was her exact phrase. And that's the problem. We've done a risk assessment of the country, and we've discovered the problem is us. Yes, we're looking at the threat of political violence in the 2017 Kenya election, and we've decided the greatest threat of violence is the office right next to me on the 6th floor. They're planning to militantly mobilize tens of thousands of militant rioters. So the U.S. Institute of Peace needs $100 million more to stop the U.S. Institute of Peace. Okay, let's we're going to skip around a little bit and go some video to video. Let's look at mobilization planning. Again, the problem they identify here is militant mobilization, right? What's the next video? How do you militantly mobilize people?
So you've made a combined timeline and turned it into quite a busy calendar. What's next? Well, to accomplish these goals, you'll need to identify who needs to be included in order to accomplish these goals. The
goals are winning the election for your State Department sponsored agenda. Because remember, the U.S. Institute of Peace gets its money from the State Department, who gets its money from the taxpayer. What are our goals here?
Rewind for a minute. Do you remember when we talked about the spectrum of allies and opponents tool? The spectrum of allies and opponents tool.
Oh my God. Okay, let's see. Was that here? Hold on a second. The spectrum of
election-related violence.
Wait. Our spectrum of allies and opponents tools. This is going to be power mapping. This is going to be straight out of community organizing 101.
That tool helped us identify specific stakeholders related to a specific goal. Now we are going to dig a little deeper. When you look back at your own spectrum of allies and opponents tool, you'll notice that the outer ring contains actions that would help a group reach or mobilize each sector in hopes to move it along the spectrum toward active allies. The red arrows represent the tactics focused on moving their targets. There are two types of targets that you should focus on as you consider moving individuals along the spectrum. The first are the primary targets. Those are the...
What is this? How the fuck could you voluntarily let this group into your country? This is just electioneering. So the U.S. Institute of Peace has allies and opponents in the country. I mean, this is just CIA shit. How do we get more people allied with our little CIA web in the country? And how do we isolate our opponents? What are you doing here? Who invited you? Why are you in Kenya?
People who can address your group's interest and needs directly.
My group's interest and needs? I thought you were about stopping violence by plotting mass violence. Where did we get into just straight up helping one side win the election? I guess we missed the course on that.
It can be someone you want to build a relationship with or negotiate with. It can be a CEO of a corporation or a symbolic public figure. Sometimes you may not have direct access to these targets, so it's important to identify secondary targets that do have access to them.
This is like a pickup artist for how to do CIA work. We have our target. So we're in Nigeria, and Nigeria is oil rich. So in order to have the State Department's preferred candidate win the election, we're going to need the support of the local oil industry. Turns out the local oil industry is a state-owned Nigerian oil giant that's got joint partnerships with Shell and British Petroleum. How do we talk to Shell and British Petroleum to get them to back the CIA-backed candidate? Well, we might not start out with a contact. So the target, the HB7 over there, we might not be able to get to her because she's in conversation with 3 of her friends. But if we talk to the HB4, and then we neg the HB4, and then we forward merge into a group with the HB7, then we can isolate, proceed to comfort, and then close.
These are individuals that have a direct relationship with primary targets or whose actions can impact a primary target's decision.
Listen how they're talking about the target. I don't care what this is. This is like a drone strike target. This is just political targeting. It's incredible. But this is a community organizing. This is the same shit unions do when they do power mapping. It's the same shit the CIA does with community organizing.
These secondary targets could be consumers of a corporate product or an influential spiritual leader even.
An influential spiritual leader. Our target. We're back to the future. Our target. The target. Our target. To influence him. We gotta throw this back on. Our targets are the influential spiritual leaders. Take a minute. We got to cool down a sec. Take a minute. Let this ride out.
We want, we need, and we want more. We pray for our desire. When things go wrong, we start to worry. You know good things come to those who do. The faith in God is oh so true. But when things go wrong, we start to worry. And say, Lord, 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 why don't you help me with my problem?
Do you guys see this U.S. Institute of Peace fucking criminal conspiracy scenario planner? Read this. Mob violence action micro course. Do you think any of these women even speak English? Do you think any of the... Does this woman know what the fuck this sign in English says? This is being printed for the international English-speaking press. Pray the devil back to hell. But look at this. Featured scenario. Protests in Quesada. Is that an imaginary? Is this like one of these special forces simulations? Is that an actual place, or is that a probably a made up city? The students have spontaneously, with no funding from USAID whatsoever, with no communication with the Assistant Secretary for Western African Affairs whatsoever, the students declared a nonviolent, I hereby declare a nonviolent movement. Why do you need to specify that it's nonviolent? Oh, we're not talking to you. We're talking to the media so they know what to print in the press release. and began by protesting in front of government buildings January 6th. And a month later started staging sit-ins in the midst of critical city intersections, blocking the highways, shutting down the entire city. No one can get to work. No one, babies being delivered in their cars because they can't get to the hospital. People on their way to urgent care dying in their cars. People missing rent payments because they can't get to work. The critical artery of the entire society shut down. And the scenario is, how do you help these people? They've been doing sit-ins in critical intersections, but it's in danger of fading away without achieving its goals. When even committing mass crimes is not working, now, U.S. Institute of Chaos consultant, how do you help them achieve their goals? What the fuck are you doing in my country? You are coordinating a criminal conspiracy. How about this? How about we set up the Institute for Peace, the Institute for Even More Peace, okay? The United States Institute for Even More Peace. And what we will do is we will stage sit-ins in the midst of the critical intersections of your fucking house. How about that? So you can't get out of your house to drive to the U.S. Institute of Peace. You can't get out of your house to go to the grocery store. No one can even Uber Eats you fucking food because the U.S. Institute for Even More Peace has declared a nonviolent movement to protest your attack on democracy. How about that? When you're on day 3 of an involuntary hunger strike because no fucking food can be delivered to your house, we'll see if you still agree that that's the definition of nonviolent. Instructors, Maria Stephan, the same riot coach for the Black Lives Matter protests, the same riot coach for Shutdown D.C. in November 2020, the same riot coach for the ICE riots, the same riot coach for No Kings and all that. It's the same people. The director of the Mob Violence Action Program of the U.S. Institute of Peace and her little buddy, Erica Chenoweth. It's a 3-hour course. God, how do we get this? Can anyone get access to this 3-hour course? We need the USIP files on this. I mean, they are training people to commit criminal conspiracy. And as Maria Stephan said, and we want them to get arrested, because then we can paint in the international media that the government is cracking down on peaceful protesters. They have entire training guides on how to do what the ICE rioters did, shutting down city intersections and highways. They have entire U.S. government training guides on how to do what Black Lives Matter did, shutting down the highways. And these same people from this same training guide are the ones coordinating this at home. Literally the same playbook and the same players and the same targets. As you heard Maria Stephan say, the problem is it's Trump and the U.S. and we need to do civil disobedience here. That's a crime. That's a criminal conspiracy. And we need these files before the statute of limitations runs out. Peace Tech, that's another U.S. Institute of Peace. Look at this fucking CIA sounding name. Professional Development Portfolio Manager. Wonder what his history is. Darren Cambridge. Facilitator. I enjoy teaching, training, and organizing around organizational development. So this is a professional riot trainer. He supported several clients, including USAID, USAID Green Cities, the fucking World Bank, NIH. For 5 years, he worked at the U.S. Institute of Peace. He helped launch the Global Campus. Well, hey, buddy, thanks for doing us a solid, because that's how we found out what you're up to. This is the Global Campus that we're getting the videos from. The Peace Frequency, a podcast series using mob violence. Oh, and of course, before that, okay, so that's how he got there. He was at ICNC. This is the international NGO funded by USAID and the State Department to train riot groups. It was ICNC where we found the how to topple a dictator, how to taking down a dictatorship, the Oatpour film. And of course, he facilitated trainings in Belize, Mexico, Spain, the Philippines, Cambodia, and throughout the United States. Great. Of course, there's a university connection. Common Cause. Okay, so just straight up like DNC shit. Youth programs. Oh, we got to get to the youth building. The youth, they have all these videos on how to train young people. Okay, so he's been doing this shit for 20 years. And of course, he's on the board of a Montessori school. Fuck, man. It's dark. It's dark. It's dark. For large government clients, workshop designer, Vietnamese youth. Assuring the quality of the bank operation in Africa. Remember last stream on the CIA and the banks? All right, let's get back to it. Let's get more to these trainings. If anyone can find the 3-hour thing here, the 3-hour training, where they walk through the scenario for how to plan mass shutdowns of highways, let me know. Otherwise, I can ask admin people. Faith for rights. Okay, so we're skipping around a little bit. Let's get back to, where were we? Okay, I think we were with this gal, right?
Once you've identified your primary, secondary targets, you can begin mobilization planning. Mobilization planning is an exercise that helps us identify where the most effective outreach for the largest number of influential persons can take place. Ready to get to work?
This is an organized influence campaign. This is the very thing that censors say should be taken down. Organized government-sponsored influence campaigns. They don't want anybody else to have influence campaigns because they want a fucking state monopoly on influence campaigns.
Begin by creating a chart with at least 5 columns. The far left column will contain specific names from your spectrum of allies.
Mobilization planning. Let's look at this. Look at this shit. Did you guys see this? Campaign mission. Specific group or individual from the spectrum of allies. How can this group put pressure on the primary or secondary targets? This is literally a government-sponsored political pressure campaign. Do you see why the State Department delegates this dirty work to the U.S. Institute of Peace, and why the State Department doesn't do it directly? Do you see why this building is right next door to the State Department? It's right next door to it. Why do we go about the roundabout way of taking U.S. taxpayer funds from our income taxes, giving it to the State Department, and then the State Department giving it to this group? Because imagine the fucking scandal if the State Department did this directly. If the U.S. Embassy in the country was having organized influence operations to put pressure on the business owners in your country, to put pressure on the media companies in your country, to put pressure on the religious groups, the youth groups in your country. This is CIA shit right out in the open. Maybe it's not really in the open. I mean, this stuff, Spiral found it. And also, remember, they operate in these countries where you can't say no to letting them in. If you want the next tranche of your World Bank loan, you better let in the U.S. Institute of Peace vulture army, or else your government will go bankrupt. You won't get the next tranche of your IMF or World Bank loan unless you allow independent third-party moderators from the U.S. Institute of Peace to conduct their peacekeeping operation. They basically say we will kill the cells in your body unless you let a virus come through and take over the nucleus. How many people do you think know that this is what the U.S. Institute of Peace is doing? How can this group, my target, put pressure on primary or secondary targets?
The other 4 columns contain 4 guiding questions that will help you assess reaching and mobilizing any of the group on your diagram. Move across your chart, fill in the answers to the following questions. Where would you find this group or individual? What kind of communication is most...
Do you understand why we fund transgender dance festivals? They take like a high-functioning society that has a natural kind of aversion to people wanting their kids trans or something. And so you have a kind of out-group that's tolerated, but there is some latent prejudice. And that group is going to have animosity against the majority representing government. So they will treat that group as an ally because it hates the government. And they will find this group in the places they congregate. The transgender dance festivals, the transgender art festivals, the transgender music festivals, the transgender cultural affinity groups. You talk to them about how a new government that's more tolerant and inclusive of transgender rights is necessary and the time is now, and we'll give you money to promote it. And then they will put pressure on the local businesses. They will put pressure on the local governments. They'll put pressure on the local organizations. And this is how you have groups like the IRI, the Republican Institute, the International Republican Institute, the CIA wing of the GOP, who may be squeamish about having their own kids being transed. But shit, if it helps us get the petroleum out of Malaysia, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Effective for reaching them? And what is the cost-benefit analysis of targeting this group? And how can this group put pressure on the primary or secondary targets? If you have difficulty answering any of these questions for any of your specific allies, that means you're going to have to do some additional research before completing your assessment phase. By doing this exercise, not only can you determine if the cost-benefit analysis is too high for moving a particular group, but you can also identify the most effective outreach for the greatest number of people to help your campaign be more effective and therefore more successful.
Cost-benefit. Does it cost given our limited budget and the fact that we're operating in 100 different countries, are they influenceable enough, or will it take too much money? Let's go to developing timelines and SMART goals. Let's see this. To develop the organizational capacity building to carry out a mob violent action with at least 20 affinity groups that have done the internal work of examining power dynamics and building a trusting team culture. This is, you know how you get this, like, let's see, what is like the organizational network of NGOs, No Kings protest or something, right? A coalition of more than 200 groups. You know how they always have this like giant affinity network chart? 1 million rising. Strategic non-cooperation. They use the exact same language. They use the exact same language Maria Stephan does while being coordinated by Maria Stephan. Strategic non-cooperation. That means non-cooperation with the fucking law. That's what that means. Non-cooperation with fucking law enforcement. Remember, what was that Maria Stephan's language there?
Conflict, or ICNC. ICNC is a nonprofit organization dedicated to the study and practice of strategic nonviolent action.
Strategic non-cooperation. Let's see. Perceptions, Journal of International Affairs. Strategic non-cooperation. Strategic non-cooperation causes a complete collapse of the system. Gene Sharp. The fucking CIA, literally CIA, DOD funded riot scholar. So their goal here, strategic non-cooperation, their goal here is a complete collapse of the system unless they get what they want. January 6th was strategic non-cooperation. How you like that? It's insurrection. That's what this is. Inducing system collapse unless the system gives way to their demands. Even though people voted for the government that's in power, if they can get 11.5 million people involved in the Black Lives Matter protests or the shutdown DC, they can terrorize and bring things to the ground. But that's why they have to mass censor Trump movements that involve taking to the streets. They need complete control of the streets to be able to dominate this way. Let's get back to the videos. They need control of speech and they need control of the streets. All right, let's check this out. So this is a training seminar. Now, this one's only about 2.5 minutes. To develop an organizational capacity to carry out a riot with at least 20 affinity groups, the NGOs, the unions, the cultural affinity groups, that have already done the internal work of assessing the power dynamics so they know who to put pressure on. Let's check this out.
Earlier in the course, we emphasized the need for goals to be specific, measurable, attainable.
Nadine Block. I want every email of Nadine Block. This is crazy. How many riots did you organize? Did you organize any in the U.S.? Did you teach the same scenarios?
Attainable, relevant, time-bound, and theory of change supporting. SMART goals provide focus, clarify.
Theory of change supporting. Remember what AOC had to study in her USAID-sponsored college trip to Niger? She had to study theories of social change.
Such internal work requires a spectrum of conflict transformation tools, which include a combination of nonviolent action and peace-building skills. Now it's time to answer the question, how will I identify and sequence my internal work to build a stronger movement? To do this, we use timelines.
Begin by taking each one of your SMART goals and creating a timeline. For example, one of our SMART goals may be to develop the organizational capacity to carry out a nonviolent action with at least 20 affinity groups that have done the internal work of...
They need at least 20 affinity groups so that they have a terrorizing enough sized mob. They need at least 20 affinity groups so that there's enough people in the streets that they can successfully terrorize people.
Examining power dynamics, assessing the context, and building a trusting team culture. By November, members of a community group might begin by carrying out...
What happens in November? Oh yeah, that's when the election is.
A visioning exercise to imagine their hopes and ideals for what their community might look like. The group might then realize they need to address internal power dynamics and enable participation by all.
This is like, you know, they want to recruit like a black population and a gay population, but a lot of the black population might not like the gay population, and the gay population may harbor resentments about that. So, you know, we need more U.S. aid money in order to make people look past their differences. And this is the same thing they do in Ukraine. This is like what they do in Yugoslavia. They're like, well, the Bosnians and the Armenians hate each other, but they're both useful against the Serbs. So how do we make them not hate each other for long enough to take to the streets and riot together? And that's why a lot of this stuff, this is why you get music festivals, guys. This is why the CI loves fucking giant outdoor music festivals. And they talk about this. Well, it cuts through the differences. You know, one side of the coalition might be pro-abortion, the other one might be anti-abortion, but they both love Bono. So they're out there partying together, singing together. They align together. And they commonly hate the regime we want to topple and create a power vacuum so we can install a vassal state government. So bring in Bono. He'll unite them.
Next, the group might organize a day when they can begin using the assessment tools to help address their own understanding of the situation, determine the gaps in their knowledge, and develop a research agenda. Recognizing the need for strong teamwork and trust, they may decide to spend more time doing
Yeah, I know. This is like a Gays for Palestine. Yeah, because they bring in the fucking riot coordinators and the money spigots from the U.S. Institute of Peace and the ICNC and the NED, and they're like, listen, you'll all get paid at the end of this. So, you know, we're going to fund your workshops. We're going to fund your programs. You guys are going to have a position in the new government if you topple this one. So put your differences aside and get rid of Trump.
Team building exercise and begin to form affinity groups.
Once you've developed a separate timeline for each goal, the next step is to bring them together on a combined timeline and create a calendar of actionable and achievable items. Once you've done this, ask yourself if it's feasible and think about access to resources and staff, and then also insert assessment points. Remember,
assessment points. If you guys, man, if you speak fluent State Department, this is just incredible. I mean, because assessment is that's the word. That's the word. You run a baseline assessment on the country, and then like this is what the NGOs do. They will submit an assessment of the country to the State Department in requests for funding, in operational planning. I mean, that's literally like the State Department phrase. Like if you look at IRI's baseline assessment for Bangladesh, they're like, well, we can get the transgenders together. We can get their two disaffected minority groups who hate the government. So we're going to sponsor cultural affinity days to unite them as a common front.
Not all goals need to be worked on at the same time. In fact, very few organizations or campaigns have the resources to do everything they would like to do at any given moment.
Yes, but the sequencing is once they have it all together, what does the CIA guide say? Once they have it all together, then at the crucial moment, they'll carry out their fury of violence. all these cells creating our little affinity networks within the public health sphere, within the legal sphere, within the business sphere, within the educational sphere. They'll all move in separate cells as we all organize them. But then at the appropriate moment, their influence will be used to fuse the groups together into a unified national front to take down the government. Challenging conventional conceptions of power. Let's check out this one. Mob violent movements tap into unmentioned and unrecognized power. 4 minutes.
One of the first things that we want to start on.
Oh, this is our boy, right? This is our dude from Daryl, right? Wasn't that his name? We just looked up this guy's sanctuary, his non-cooperation. Is that really what it's called? Linda, see if you can find that link. I'm interested now. You had my interest. Now you have my attention. We just looked up this guy's CV, right? This is this guy, right? Darren Cambridge. Training Resources Group, Inc. Do you think this group gets USAID funding? Well, I mean, they have contracts. They have USAID contracts, World Bank contracts, U.S. Institute of Peace contracts. Training. Oh, it's just training. What are you training them to do? Oh, to take to the streets and riot and burn shit down.
Unpacking when talking about nonviolent struggle and nonviolent action is this idea of power. And I think our definition of power, what we imagine when we hear the word power, comes with a lot of preconceived ideas. And we want to...
So it sounds like you don't want nonviolence at all. It sounds like you want to use violence to achieve power while hiding behind the bullshit, known, documented lie of nonviolence. Like, peace has nothing to fucking do with what you do. You cause the opposite of peace. What you want to do is you want to help one particular group who's a vassal state of the global agenda of the U.S. State Department achieve political power by using mob violence to do it. What the fuck are you doing on about power if that's not the case? But U.S. Institute of Power, that's a little bit too on the nose. No, let's go with peace. But you promote mob violence to achieve power. Yeah, but the United States Agency of Mob Violence to Achieve Power, it kind of sounds like we're an organized crime agency, since these things are technically illegal. Okay, let's go with peace. Good one, Darren.
Unpack those, because again, they're at the root of nonviolent action. So I'm going to give you a definition, and we'll start with that.
Let me pull this up. You guys are coming in hot with the links. Thank you, Spiral. Yeah. Okay. We'll get to this later. Let's keep going with this because I am Garfield, the curious cat right now. Monolithic versus pluralistic theories of power. Power. How do we seize power? I thought you wanted peace. No, fuck that. Chaos to create power.
The definition of power is the capacity to accomplish purpose. And that's Aristotle's definition. You'll find it in the dictionary.
Oh, it's Aristotle.
Capacity to accomplish purpose. So with that definition in mind, I want to paint a picture for you, a short scenario, and then...
Yeah, we're not seizing political control over your country. We're just seizing capacity to accomplish purpose. What's your purpose? To take over the political apparatus of your entire country? Don't say that. Don't say that. Just keep it vague. Say purpose.
Then I want you to think about some of the questions in this scenario. So I want you to imagine that Joseph Stalin and Kim Jong-il, two of the most ruthless dictators of the 20th century.
How about Joseph Biden?
They're on an airplane together, and they're flying to the annual summit of dictators. And the second the plane takes off, the two of them immediately get into a conflict with one another. and they start arguing about everything you can think of. They start arguing about what route the plane should take to get to the summit. They start arguing about where the plane should land once they arrive. They start arguing about who's going to be the first person to step off of the plane once the door opens. And this goes on and on and on. It gets more intense. They start threatening each other. If you don't do this, I'm going to do that. If you don't do that, I'm going to do this. So they're in a deep conflict with one another. So let's think about our definition here. The capacity to accomplish purpose. And we've got these two folks in conflict with one another. My question that I want you to think about is, who has the most power in this conflict, in this situation? Who is going to be able to actually determine the outcome of this conflict? Think about this.
As you watch this, remember, you are paying for this as the taxpayer. This is entirely government, U.S. government funded.
Some of you might say, well, I think Stalin has the most power in this conflict because he's just a bigger guy. So you could overpower Kim Jong-il. Some of you may say, well, I think Kim Jong-il has more power in this situation because he has the most loyal army. He's able to brainwash his soldiers the most. Some of you may say, well, Stalin, I think, has the most power because he's got a larger army.
Jesus, dude, get to the point.
A draw. We could go, and that is, of course, the pilot of the aircraft. Some of you are thinking about the unmentioned individual in this conflict. And that is, of course, the pilot of the aircraft.
Oh, wow. You took 3 minutes to say, wow, the pilot actually has the power, not Stalin and Kim Jong-un in the back of the plane. So we, the people, being organized by the Central Intelligence Agency, are the pilot. I mean, think about how fucking funny this is. Who the fuck are you, dude? Darren Cambridge. Is that even your real last name? Darren Cambridge? At Training Resources Group Incorporated, a for-profit riot organizer for the U.S. Institute of Peace, which is fully funded by the U.S. State Department, trying to organize groups of tens of thousands of people in Niger and Malaysia and the Philippines, telling them, you're actually the pilot. You actually can control where the plane goes. You have more power than the dictators. Who's the pilot? These assholes are the pilot. This is the pilot who's telling them what to do. It's these assholes rioting around the world being flown by this fucking pilot. This dude's the pilot. He's trying to convince them you're the master of your own fate. And actually, if you have the power because dictators can't wield power unless their countries work. What if they can't use the roads? Well, then dictators can't drive tanks down the roads. What if dictators get sick? Well, you control the hospitals. You know, dictators' children need to learn in school. Well, you control the schools. So you are the pilot. And it's like, no. You are the pawns. You're actually the plane being driven by the pilot, which is the fucking CIA operating under State Department cover through the U.S. Institute of Peace. It's unfucking believable. You can tell these people, look at this Cheshire grin. Look, did that pep talk work? Are you convinced? Are you willing to down the plane for me? Will you crash the plane with no survivors so that I can get my puppet dictatorship installed into your country?
The pilot is the individual who actually determines where the plane's going to go. The pilot is the one who actually knows how to operate an aircraft.
And you, U.S. Institute of Peace, are the one piloting these fucking movements. You are piloting them around. You are giving them their SMART goals. You are giving them their timeline assessment. You are giving them their list of strategic targets to put pressure on. You are the fucking pilot, you asshole.
So a lot of what's going to determine the outcome of this conflict lies in the hands of the pilot. Now, you probably are saying to yourself, well, Darren, that's an unfair question. You kind of tricked me. You only mentioned Joseph Stalin and Kim Jong-il, the way in which you even frame the conflict, you left out the pilot. Well, that's exactly the point, is that oftentimes when we talk about power and we talk about conflicts...
You notice this like spa music in the background? They have this like, this... Every single one of these videos has this like...
I like this song.
You are the pilot.
Of course you do.
Hello, Derek.
Hello.
Welcome to your relaxation time.
Welcome to your riot orientation training. I mean, your nonviolent movement training simulation.
Like this wonderful 80s classic soothe you. Just a nice, warm, happy time.
Happy music. It's so happy. Peace. Seize the power. Destroy property. Shut down bridges and buildings and roads.
Nothing to worry about at all. Just
Power just means capacity to carry out a purpose. What's the purpose? Keep watching.
Hey there, Derek. My name is Little Cletus.
Hey there, Derek. My name is Darren. Darren Cambridge. You remember me? I'm just the head of Training Corporate Resources Incorporated.
I'm just a regular kid who wants you to know the real truth about child labor laws, okay?
Okay.
They're silly and outdated. In the good old days, kids as young as 5 could work as they pleased.
And notice they're trying to take down the government in Malaysia and the Philippines.
Textile factories to iron smelts. Yippee, hooray! But today, the age-old right of children to work is under attack. From the Philippines to Bangladesh, in China and India.
Philippines to Bangladesh. I'm sorry. Where was Philippines?
And South America too. Boo!
Honduras.
Boo! But you can help these children, Derek, by killing the Prime Minister of Malaysia. He is bad.
What? By overthrowing the government of Malaysia. That's like literally what they're doing here. 87 countries. 87 countries they're operating in.
You learn martial arts.
You learn how to riot. Notice he's like, what? Kill the Prime Minister of Malaysia? What? Take to the streets in a violent riot to overthrow my government?
The Prime Minister of Malaysia. He's bad.
What?
You learn martial arts.
You learn how to take to the streets in a mob violent shutdown of the city's critical infrastructure.
Prime Minister of Malaysia, bad.
Your democratically elected government, bad.
Martial arts, good.
Riots, good. Obey Darren Cambridge.
You have one objective.
You have one objective. You have one purpose. You have one capacity to carry out a purpose.
Do not be distracted by the beautiful celebrities. Do as you've been trained to do and kill the Malaysian Prime Minister.
Do as you've been trained to do and overthrow your democratically elected government in the name of peace. All right. Most people who engage in nonviolent struggle are not pacifists. Look at this. They're saying, you don't need to be a pacifist. This is not about pacifism, peace. You see this? This is a U.S. government fucking training manual. Saying, oh, no. We are not pacifists. We believe in violence. We believe in militant struggle to gain power.
So civil resistance, also known as nonviolent struggle.
This is Maria Stefan, our domestic riot coordinator.
Nonviolent action and people.
Doctor. Yeah, really. Can you provide any life-saving services, doctor? Or are they all for destroying things? A little heavy on the raccoon makeup.
People power is.
I mean, this is like some Dr. Evil shit. You guys don't like when I eat gummies on stream, so I'm going to mute myself while I just let this play.
Nonviolent action and people power is a technique of waging conflict using active nonviolent means.
Waging conflict. I thought you were supposed to be stopping conflict. U.S. Institute of fucking Peace. It sounds like you're the threat to fucking peace. It sounds like you're the source of the fucking conflict. Why are you teaching us how to wage conflict when we're supposed to be stopping the conflict? Oh, no, because the conflict stops after the State Department gets what it wants. And after the State Department's donor drafter class in the hedge fund world and the commercial banks and the multinational corporations, after they get what they want, then we'll say the conflict's over. But until then, we are waging fucking war at the Institute of Peace.
That can be distinguished from conventional political action and from violence.
Can't be distinguished from violence because you define property value destruction, burning down buildings, blowing up pipelines as nonviolent. That's domestic terrorism. And you call it nonviolence.
So there is no single definition of this phenomenon, but for this purpose, I will draw principally on the works of Dr. Gene Sharp.
And there it fucking is. Literally, the CIA-sponsored color revolution OG theorist, whose book From Dictatorship to Democracy is literally handed out by the Central Intelligence Agency and has been for 4 fucking decades, to the point where this book is banned in like 36 countries. Because if you're reading that book, it means you want to overthrow the government. And the CIA gave it to you.
A sociologist who famously wrote a 3-volume Politics of Nonviolent Action in 1973, and Dr. Brian Martin, a professor of social sciences at the University of Wollongong in Australia. So conventional action includes voting, lobbying, campaigning, working, buying and selling goods, dialogue, negotiations, anything that is routine within a society.
You mean anything that's legal? Conventional. This is like the legal way to influence an election. I can't wait, Maria, for what you are about to say next. So conventional ways to express yourself in an election include voting, lobbying, campaigning. Go on. We can all hear you now.
That is routine within a society.
Legal within a society, but go on.
Nonviolent action, on the other hand, goes beyond routine behavior.
You know what's crazy, Maria? Call me crazy. But what you just showed us all looks like nonviolent action. This is what I would call nonviolent action. So why do you need a separate category of things to call nonviolent? Methinks the lady doth emphasize the non in nonviolent too much. These are the nonviolent actions. I have a weird feeling what you're about to tell me are the violent actions that you are going to try to lie to our faces in order to avoid a criminal indictment for everyone engaged in wide-scale violence, to try to argue that it isn't. But please, please, go on.
Nonviolent action, on the other hand, goes beyond routine behavior. And
I can't get past this. The way she stresses this. Like, listen to the way she says this.
Beyond routine behavior. Action, on the other hand, goes beyond routine. That is routine within a society.
Nonviolent action, on the other hand.
She stresses nonviolent action as if to juxtapose it against this being violent. You guys seeing this? She's like, here are the conventional actions. Nonviolent actions, on the other hand. It's like, wait, these are the nonviolent actions. Why are you stressing nonviolent on the other hand? That would juxtapose it against violent. These are the genuinely nonviolent things. Notice how they're like, we're the Institute of Peace to prevent violence. Our framework is like, you have two things you can do. Conventional actions, but if they don't make the CIA win the election, then we have violent actions that we're calling nonviolent actions. How do you go from this list?
Negotiations, anything that is routine within a society. Nonviolent action, on the other hand, goes beyond routine.
What do you mean, on the other hand? This hand was all nonviolent. The problem is, the correct thing is like, this would be nonviolent action, and then violent action would be blowing up oil pipelines, throwing Molotov cocktails in police cars, burning down police precincts.
Society. Nonviolent action, on the other hand, goes beyond routine behavior and works outside of normal institutions.
I think you mean works outside of normal laws.
And often challenges conventional practices.
You mean conventional laws?
So think bus drivers refusing to collect bus fares, youth staging a sit-in in front of the parliament, consumers refusing to patronize certain businesses, setting up alternative systems of social welfare, using satire to parody certain political practices.
Refusal to collect fees. So you're saying like bankrupt the city comptroller by having the bus drivers who are getting paid by the city to collect fees, but instead they try to bankrupt the city by depriving the treasury. So basically not enforcing laws, staging sit-ins so that you can't throw people out of your institution when they're not buying anything. Boycotts, so mass worker walkouts to shut down society.
Practices. The boundary between conventional and nonviolent action depends really on the circumstance.
Depends on what we can get away with.
Handing out leaflets in one society may be routine. Doing it in another country may get you killed. Same thing.
Fortunately, that's where you guys come in, because I'm at my safe, cushy sinecure at the U.S. Institute of Peace. They can't touch me. But you guys should go out and die for me, because then we'll have a martyr for the cause.
With strikes, which in some places have become so routine as to be considered part of conventional politics. In other places, it's a highly risky activity.
And that's where USA job fairs come in. When the Special Forces, I went over that memo with you guys, remember, with the U.S. Special Forces planning riots, race riots, to pit the Africans against the Chinese in West Africa. And how do they get the African workers to agree to leave their jobs to boycott the Chinese companies? The Special Forces, Fort fucking Bragg, the Information Warfare Center, coordinates with USAID so that USAID swoops into West Africa with job fairs so that the African workers can go on strike. But to the international media, it's a USAID job fairs. You don't want these workers to go without an income. They could starve. Well, why are they going without an income? Because the U.S. Institute of Peace convinced them to go on strike. So now we're paying the U.S. Institute of Peace to get them to go out and strike, and then we're paying USAID so that they can get paid to do it. Well, it's hard enough for our kids to get jobs here. It's unfucking believable.
So to summarize, nonviolent action means action. We are not talking about passivity, pacifism, or inaction. This form of behavior goes beyond routine politics. And it's important to note that the opponents of nonviolent resistors often and can use violent force against the protesters.
Because what do you do when you stage a sit-in at a critical city highway. I'll just pull your own fucking receipt here. And they deliberately do this. Oh, did I not save the image? Damn, I didn't save the image. You guys remember the image of the U.S. Institute of Peace scenario planner for helping a youth movement who declared a nonviolent action stage mass blockages of the city's busiest streets. The only way to remove these criminals is to use force. But that's where the USAID-funded media comes in and says, oh, they're using force against nonviolent protesters. Yeah, because the city will choke to death and die if nobody removes them. It's a deliberate illegal provocation to shut things down so that the only way to have the society function is to use force to remove them. And then they argue they're using force against peaceful protesters, even though they're not peaceful at all. They're destroying property. But that doesn't count as violence, according to our fucking psycho get out of jail free card rigged definition.
Nonviolent action can be divided into actions against something, so think strikes, boycotts, along with actions that are for something.
And note how she doesn't want to itemize it all. Destroying pipelines, destroying police cars, destroying federal buildings. Oh, no. Let's just do ... and many more. We'll talk about that offline.
So building underground schools.
I mean, literally, these people literally called this nonviolent action. ... and many more. Light the fucking Parliament building on fire. I mean, never lose track of that. This to them was a successful nonviolent action. This is terrorism. And when it comes from the U.S. Institute of Peace, it's state-sponsored terrorism.
Schools issue.
Oh, they love this. This is where you get you get all this, funding educational facilities. But it's building underground schools for riot generators.
Doing a manifesto, things of that nature. We can also
Issuing a manifesto, huh? School shooter vibes over here.
distinguish between principled nonviolent action, also known as pacifism or nonviolence as a way of...
What? Principled nonviolent action, also known as pacifism, but they're saying we are explicitly not pacifist. We're explicitly not rejecting violence under any circumstance? Wait, is she about to advocate for violence?
life, which is the rejection of violence under any circumstance. And pragmatic nonviolent action, which rejects violence for strategic or practical reasons.
So basically saying, this is where you do domestic terrorism against property. We're not against violence. We're just tactically holding ourselves out as nonviolent so that the international media portrays us as the victim of an oppressed government instead of the terrorists destroying the city.
Practical reasons. While sometimes the lines between these two can be blurred, for the purpose of this course, we are focused on nonviolent action as a technique of struggle.
Pragmatic. For the purposes of this course, we're focusing on blowing up pipelines. For the purposes of this course, we're focusing on burning down property and calling that nonviolent. Unbelievable.
As prominent pacifist and nonviolence scholar George Lakey once said, most people who engage in nonviolent struggle are not pacifists, and most pacifists do not engage in nonviolent struggle.
So you are an arsonist. So you are You're not pacifist, you're an arsonist. Good. Very good. Guys, I'm like addicted to this shit. Spectrum of peace building tools.
The reason I talk of a spectrum of peace building tools is because I want to convey that there are multiple tools that peace builders rely upon every day.
Riot builders.
And rather than a continuum, which implies that they are used in sequence.
This fucking spa music. Soothe your mind at ease while you dream of setting the Parliament building on fire. Methods of nonviolent action. Stories from the field. This is going to be good. Self-confessions of our crimes.
The methods of nonviolent action are numerous, diverse, and ever expanding. In 1973,
this is the Gene Sharp. This is From Dictatorship to Democracy. Actually, this I think was the Albert Einstein Institute, but that was Gene Sharp too. Ostracism, social boycott, lysistratic non-action. What does lysistratic mean? There's an SAT word for you. Lysistratic. I gotta know. Come on, man. This is in the U.S. government fucking rule book? Are you kidding me? Do you remember this thing where it was like, women, don't have sex with Trump supporters. Wives, go on a sex strike. Promise your husband you'll go on a sex strike if he votes for Trump in 2024. And this is from a fucking U.S. government manual? Lysistratic refers to a form of nonviolent protest where women refuse to have sex with men, often in an attempt to achieve political or social change. You're fucking paying your government to train like Kenyans, like 35-year-old Kenyan women to like not have sex with their husbands if they vote the wrong way in the upcoming election.
3, Dr. Gene Sharp published.
They're Dr. Gene Sharp. Yeah, they're all doctors, right? It's the first rule. Hippocratic Oath, do no harm. Theirs is do no peace. What's your job at the Institute of Peace? What's the first rule of the U.S. Institute of Peace? Rule number 1, do no peace.
Published a list of 198 methods of nonviolent action, in which he cataloged the.
We got music. You guys see? Ah, shit. Here we go again. Damn. This is why you see the CI in the music industry. Damn. I'm telling you. This is why you have 22 hip-hop artists come over to the U.S. State Department's music diplomacy program. Bank runs, refusal to pay fees, refusal to pay debts, fucking Fight Club style, destroy the credit card building companies, the credit card buildings, domestic embargo, lockout, general strike, boycott, 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 boycott.
The myriad nonviolent tactics that movements have used throughout history, like sit-ins, strikes, boycotts, picketing, public demonstrations, banging of pots and pans, and musical performances.
Musical performances. But, okay, look, some of these are First Amendment protected. But this blocking a fucking highway, here's what I'm trying to get at with the U.S. Institute of Peace files. This is a crime. And the people who organize this are criminals, engaged in a criminal conspiracy. You cannot block a public fucking highway You want to do a sit-in on a public park where it's public property and you're not blocking public traffic? You want to sit in at your friend's house on your own private property? But here, when you can't remove, you're committing a fucking crime. And the organizers of that activity are engaged in a criminal conspiracy. We need every U.S. Institute of Peace program that facilitated these.
Choosing the appropriate methods and then training and preparing people how to use them creatively and effectively is one.
It's so funny, like, they're like going after these oil pipelines. It's like, meanwhile, they're all invested in green energy companies. Let me show you something real quick. Top investment firms dominating green energy. BlackRock, Al Gore's $40 billion green energy fund. Bill Gates is a big one too. Yeah, Bill Gates, Breakthrough Energy Ventures. Tom Steyer, Galvanized Climate Solutions. What a gift to their companies. The U.S. Institute of Peace, when they back this shit, they're killing the competitors to their fucking donors. These hedge funds investing in fossil fuel alternatives, when they blow up a pipeline or do a sit-in, who makes money off of that sit-in? Tom Steyer, Al Gore, Bill Gates. It's unbelievable. It's a rent-a-riot army deployed by the government to benefit the hedge funds of their political donors. 2004, Ukraine.
Venture into the...
Totally organic. They just declared a nonviolent action. They had nothing to do with the 1999 Oat Pour movement organized by the Central Intelligence Agency that just migrated to Ukraine in 2004.
Ukraine's Orange Revolution. Paulina Belyakova and her friend were compelled to venture into the cold December streets and join the demonstrations.
They were compelled by USAID money, you asshole.
Their nonviolent actions were not combative or disruptive to the adversary.
Really? Because do you want to show the pictures from Ukraine on Fire, the 2004 Oliver Stone? Pretty sure Ukraine was on fire. It was definitely on fire in 2014 when you ran the same Color Revolution playbook back, as we've showed so many times this stream. Like, you literally deliberately set Ukraine on fire before, after. You set it on fire. You set it on fire. It's so dishonest. It's unbelievably dishonest. I mean, just the line at which they speak out of both sides of their mouth, where they tell people to go out and riot and destroy property, and then they tell the media, oh, it's nonviolent. There's so many of these training videos. It's unbelievable.
But rather supportive and sustaining for the movement.
Okay, so first, when we came, we just came to watch.
Yeah, okay. The spa music. Rare form tonight, but it's time to fade out. This is 20 from Bratislava. Thanks, homie. By the way, it looks like your media hits paid off. You got some little kitten paw shots fired from Whitney. Whitney who? Whitney Webb? Shots fired from Whitney Webb? What do you mean? Y'all play nice now? What is that? Whitney Webb? Is that who you're talking about, Bratislava? What were the shots fired? Did I say something about... I mean, she's the one who showed up in my comments. I guess I mentioned on stream that I, was underwhelmed by the first half of her book, but I've always said that she's a tremendous researcher, and I have, even if she doesn't like me, I still have a lot of respect for her. But she came in with a crazy attitude to my comment section out of nowhere. and if she knows me, she must remember doing this. She like came into my comments and like was super territorial about stuff that's totally open source. But is that what you're talking about, Brady Sava? Oh, yeah, Marsh D142. I think he said for the Zin funds before, and then he just gave another 15 for the Zin funds. Yo, thank you, homie. I appreciate that. You guys are awesome with the support. But I'm curious if, because, I don't know, she kind of got our thing off on a bad foot. I don't have any problem with Whitney Webb. I guess I took, like a shot after she took a shot at me in the comments section, but that was on a private stream. I guess I put part of that clip publicly. But I wasn't even really taking a shot at her. It's more like, listen, I'm not convinced about the blackmail side of the story, at least in a direct sense, and that I didn't think that she'd proved that it was an organized blackmail ring, although I freely admitted that it might be the case if somebody else was doing the blackmailing, if Jeffrey Epstein was passing it on to the CIA or to Israeli military intelligence or, anyone else, but that if somebody was caught being blackmailed, like if Prince Andrew was being blackmailed, I don't think that Bill Gates would keep being friends with him. I don't think Leon Black would keep being friends with him because they'd all know. You know what I mean? Anyway.
Opponent.
And notice how I love this part. Foolish. So they say, a lot of these are infused with humor and pranks. This is why NATO declared war on memes. This is why they banned the Babylon Bee. This is why they banned funny, edgy shitposter accounts. This is why they banned Ricky Vaughn and put Doug Mackey in jail. Because they know humor works. That's how you had this crazy situation in 2018 where you had the Atlantic Council giving fucking presentations to four-star military generals about the need to censor internet memes that made fun of transgender NATO military officials because it made Russia look strong by making fun of transgender American generals. This thing that they're doing to be like, yeah, and we got to inject humor to keep the morale going and for satire. And this is why we do, Pussy Riot does these outrageous stunts. And that's why we have prank phone calls from Alexei Navalny. That's the reason they have to censor humor. They hate humor on the other side so much. Why Pepe, slaughtered them in 2016. And they had to ban Pepe from the fucking Google App Store. Couldn't have hot sauce with a Pepe thing sold in the United States. All right, we are at 3 hours and 56 minutes. We got to get it before 4 hours. Man, we are just getting started on this. We got to do another stream on this. Dr. Kirsch for the huge support. Thank you, Dr. Kirsch. And 50 from KD. Thank you, Katie. KD5. 10 from Bratislava. Yes, Whitney Webb on something called Grand Theft World Podcast. Nothing terribly salacious. I think she just noticed Hugh Epstein. Okay, I'll check it out. Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Kirsch, Katie, Bratislava. You guys are all awesome. I really appreciate it.
Kept me blindly here to stand, but still not sleeping. My weariness amazes me. I am branded on my feet. I have no one to meet, and the ancient empty streets too dead for dreaming. Hey, Mr. Tambourine not sleepy, and there is no place I'm going to. Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me. In the jingle jangle morning, I'll come following you.
All right. Good night. Godspeed. I will see you on the internet.